How we doing? I'm Jared. Today I'm going to be trying to teach you about property taxes. Exciting stuff, I'm telling you. So in this property, I'm going to explain why property owners pay taxes. I'm going to explain if municipalities visit every property. And I'm going to explain to you how you can see what information the municipality has on your property. If at any point in the video you enjoy it or learn something, feel free to drop a like. If you end up liking the content, please subscribe. And feel free to share the video with, say, other homeowners that you feel would like to know this information or should know this information. And if you feel I left anything out or have more questions you'd maybe like me to answer, feel free to leave it in the comments. Now, the state that I live in, there's really only property taxes. There's no income tax and there's no sales tax, just property tax. So on a daily basis, if you go to the store and you buy a roll of toilet papers or a video game, you're not paying any extra tax. Whatever the shelf says is the price, that's the price you pay, opposed to other places like, say, Florida. I believe Florida has like a 6% sales tax or something. So in my career, I am a municipal assessor. In my day-to-day, I visit properties and I run into homeowners who own a house in my state and maybe they own a house also in Florida. And they'll ask me, well, how come in Florida my property taxes are just a couple $100, but here my property taxes are thousands? Well, that's because in Florida, when you buy that roll of toilet papers or a video game or any other common thing you would buy at the supermarket, you're constantly paying 6% more than what you would maybe pay in my state. So throughout the entire year, you're paying a couple $1,000s in taxes. You're just not seeing it in one lump sum. Why does this homeowner have to pay this tax bill? So the property taxes, there's a lot of stuff that this money goes towards. It pays the people that work at the municipality in the town or city hall and the people who type up the tax bills. It pays for the roads that your house is on. It pays for the roads that your business is on. It pays for those roads to be repaved every X amount of years. It pays to fill the potholes. It pays the person who fills those potholes. It pays for the fill that goes in the potholes. It pays for the shovel that scoops the fill. Now, I live up north. I live in New England where there's pretty severe winters. So property taxes around here would go towards also plow trucks and the plows. And again, the drivers. It pays for the pipes that run underneath the road that bring water to your house, that bring sewage away from your house. It pays for public parks to be built and maintained. It pays for programs like food stamps, after-school activities. It pays for teachers, janitors, coaches, supplies, buses. It pays for the school that you went to, your children go to, your niece and nephew go to, your neighbor's kids go to. It pays for the police who keep the drug dealers away from your business or home. It pays for the building that the police work in. It pays for the cruisers that they drive around in. It pays for the firefighters, the building they work out of, the vehicles they drive. The firefighters who make sure if your neighbor's house catches on fire, it doesn't burn your house down too. The taxes pay for hospitals. How to figure out your property taxes. To figure out what you'll be paying in property taxes, you'll need to find out how much the town or city you live in, what the tax rate is there. Where I live, it's a mill rate, or the tax rate per $1,000. So again, where I live, if a house is valued at $200,000 and say that city's tax rate is $25 per $1,000, the $200,000, it would chop off everything after the comma, so it'd be $200 times the 25, which comes out to $5,000. So you'd pay $5,000 in taxes for the year. Or if you divide that out, you need to be setting aside $416.66 a month to make sure when that tax bill shows up, you have the money. If you're about to buy a house, don't necessarily do this equation on the current tax, the current assessment. If you're going to end up putting in an offer and buying it for $20,000 more than what it's currently assessed at, assume that next year it's going to be valued at what you buy the property for. The amount of properties that I've shown up to where people are like, my taxes went up by this much. And I look and I'm like, well, you bought the property for $40,000 more than we had it assessed for. What did you expect was going to happen? There are other places in America that have a flat tax, like, say, California, for example. They have a 1% property tax rate. So, for instance, if a property is valued at $1 million, they pay 1% of $1 million, or $10,000 in property taxes. Do assessing officials really visit every property? So the state that I live in, every municipality, town or city, must physically visit every property every 5 years. So nowadays, most municipalities set up cycle schedules where they basically break the town into like 4 or 5 sections, and every year they visit 20 to 25% of the town, of the properties in town. And by doing this, they don't have to rush and try to visit every property in 1 year. While doing this job, I've heard over the years many taxpayers saying, oh, you guys are just visiting properties to up the taxes. Incorrect. Wrong. If the town needs more money to cover the expenses or cover the budget, they don't need to visit a single property to do that. They can just raise the tax rate. They just simply, again, by law, they have to visit properties to make sure that the information that the town or city has is indeed correct. And also, we visit every property to catch the people who are doing work on their house and not pulling permits. Also, over the years, I've heard a lot of taxpayers say, nothing's changed since the last time you were here. These people obviously have never encountered human error. So the data that gets collected, it potentially passes through many hands. Say, for instance, I go out there and I measure the house and maybe take a tour through the house and I write down everything. So first off, I could potentially, when I measure the house, I could read the measuring tape incorrectly and write something down incorrectly. Or, see 3 bedrooms and for whatever reason at the end I accidentally write 4 or 2 or whatever. So just me being the first person writing down the information, I could write it down incorrectly. Then, for instance, a lot of towns I work in, I'm not the person that enters it into a computer. So that's another person who then has to try to read what I wrote. And I'll be the first person to tell you, my handwriting isn't the neatest. So the person doing data entry, like I said, has to try to decipher what I wrote. And again, they're doing data entry. They could potentially, again, go to hit 2 for 2 bedrooms and accidentally hit the 3 or something and accidentally give you 3 bedrooms. So that's why we have to visit to make sure that indeed the information the town has is correct. Oh, and also, say if I go to a property and there's no one home and the backyard is fenced, then there's possibly stuff in that backyard that my company that I work for, we do not, if there's a gated area and if the gate is shut, doesn't matter if it's locked or not, we do not walk through gates or fences, because a lot of times if there's a fence for a reason, because potentially there's a dog that belongs to that house who maybe has permanent access to that yard. So we do not walk through fences. So if there's a shed or a deck in the backyard, I potentially have to estimate that. And again, depending on how far it is, I may accidentally estimate it too big or something. Also, again, if there's no one home, and then I have to guess the interior. I have to guess what type of floors are in that house. I have to guess what kind of upkeep has been done to the inside of the house. Whether there's been no upkeep, whether it's a 60-year-old house and maybe there's been no upkeep done, or if it's a 60-year-old house and it just got complete reno within the last 5 years. The catch-22. Now, you'd think that as the population of a town or city goes up, the taxes should come down. In thought, yes. However, once you start crunching numbers, it turns out to work in reverse in the long run sometimes. It gets to a point sometimes where if new houses had to be built, or new houses are being built, there's also new roads being paved. And then, so the town has to maybe, if it's not a private road, the town has to pay for those roads. The town has to pay to repave all those roads every so many years. The town maybe has to pay to plow all those roads every year. It means more water and sewer lines have to be put in. If there's more kids in town, there's potentially going to have to at some point be another school built. And now you have to start paying for a second school or a fifth school. And that school needs teachers, janitors, coaches, supplies, upkeep on that building. There has to be a new bus route made. Maybe a new bus driver needs to be hired now. Maybe they need to buy another bus. Know your PRC, Property Record Card. This is an item that every homeowner should get familiar with. It shows you the information that the town or city has about your property, which is what your taxes are based off of. Depending on the system, company, the town or city is working with or using, there could be a lot of different information, or lack thereof. A few items that the property record card should have is a sketch of the structure, a picture of the structure, construction details such as materials that were used to build it, breakdown of the room counts, beds, baths, the year of the construction, the depreciation or age of the house, how much upkeep has been done to the house, the neighborhood that the structure is in, the construction grade or quality, and other special notes of consideration. Once a year, you should go to town or city hall and get a copy of your property record card and see that, to your knowledge, all the information on it is accurate. You should also know that, at the very least in the state that I work in, you as the property owner do not have to let the assessor in your property. You do not have to let the assessor on your property. If they try to tell you otherwise, they are lying. They are wrong. The company that I work for, we end up sending letters out to the 20% of the town that we're going to be visiting that year. We send letters out to them, to those properties, letting them know to expect us, and letting the people know that we'll be wandering around their houses, what kind of vehicles we're driving, what months we'll be out there. Some companies or towns end up sending letters out that sort of trick the taxpayer into thinking that you need to let us in. These letters don't actually say that you have to let them in, but they're worded in such a way where it just automatically makes the taxpayer, when they read it, assume that, oh, I have to let these people in. They word these letters this way to try to get into more houses, but they also word them in such a way where if they ever were brought to court, they could say, no, the letter doesn't actually say you have to let us in the house, but the letter will be worded something to the extent of, during this process, we need to check the outside measurements of the property and also check the interior. And now and check the interior, technically we have to measure the building, that we have to doesn't belong with the interior. But again, when you read the whole sentence, the average taxpayer assumes that we must belongs to the interior also. It does not. So again, to make perfectly clear, at the very least, the state that I live in, you do not have to let the assessors in your house. You do not have to let the assessors on your property. Also, if you are a relative to an owner or a tenant of a building and the assessor shows up at the door, I would suggest you inform the assessor that you are not the homeowner and you would like them to contact the homeowner or the homeowner to contact them. I would suggest, for your own legal safety, do not let the assessor in if you are not the owner of the property. And the reason for this is because if you let the assessor in, and then say the assessor sees something on the inside that causes them to increase the value, then that could cause an issue between the homeowner and yourself, where the homeowner is like, what, my taxes just skyrocketed because you let them in and they saw X. And for instance, say if you're just a tenant and that situation happens, potentially the homeowner is going to pass those new higher taxes onto you in the form of rent. So again, just to protect yourself, if you're not the owner of the house, unless you've gotten permission from the owner, don't necessarily let the assessor in the house. So if you would like no taxes, become Amish, join a Native American tribe, possibly try moving to a third world country, because I believe I have shown that there's plenty of stuff that your taxes go towards as to why your taxes exist, why your local property taxes exist. That's all I have today for when it comes to explaining property tax. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. And again, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment, any more questions you may have. And until next time, have a great day.